My name is Raphael, and this is a video from Mr. Strangelove's Political Communication class of summer 2015. In this video, I will look to analyze Harper's media policy and its restrictions on the freedom of the press. As well, I will look to understand the restriction imposed by the Harper government towards areas such as science, media, with journalists, and of course towards the Canadian public by restricting the flow of information towards them. It has become fairly obvious since Prime Minister Stephen Harper took office in 2006 that the Conservative Party of Canada has been a huge target on the backs of mainstream journalists at the National Press Gallery in Ottawa. The Prime Minister's office has since sought to control media relations by compiling lists of journalists handpicked, of course, to ask specific and carefully selected questions. These measures, according to Harper's Communication Director Sandra Buckler, would ensure that the Prime Minister does not waste his time answering unnecessary questions. Analyzing these measures, it had become easier for Stephen Harper to control communications between his government and the Canadian people, while at the same time limiting excessively questions from the media about topics that do not answer to the promotion of conservative policies, which are for Harper, unfortunately, considered a waste of time. Moving on, the Harper government, elected on a promise of accountability and transparency, has attacked and silenced groups that do not share conservative interests, such as their own federal scientists and non-governmental organizations. The Conservative Party of Canada has long been at odds with the idea of scientific research, and on findings like climate change and energy, which need immediate attention, the Conservative government has had no problem imposing restrictions on the right of scientists to freely speak on their findings to the Canadian media, while saying that climate change findings are debatable. The question is here, how do we have a debate about something that we have no information? The Canadian Science Writers Association, for example, said that interviews and questions are prepared ahead of time and that the responses from scientists are closely monitored by the government. Recently, it has become more interesting to see that cabinet ministers now are restricting scientists altogether from answering questions or quoting any interviews. Non-governmental organizations who have often criticized the Harper government have all of a sudden been investigated. When it comes to handling the mainstream media or to even have an interview with the Prime Minister's office, the Harper government has made it more difficult for media outlets to have an interview by creating a list from which media outlets must sign up to be even considered for an interview. When it comes to controlling the political message, the Prime Minister has the mentality that he must maintain control of his political message towards his base, and of course, he must keep the Conservative caucus in check. While describing Harper's media policy, parliamentary reporter Richard Brennan from the Toronto Star observed that Harper has taken a page out of the Republican handbook in the US, stating, and I quote, that Harper is all about control, and when a politician at any time attempts to subvert freedom of expression and or of press, it should be a matter of great concern for every Canadian, end of quote. So when we look at it, does the Prime Minister have a point about there being anti-conservative media outlets in Ottawa out to get his government? Or is he simply obsessed with controlling the political message via selective political communication? Our answer to this question is a bit of both. The media and the Prime Minister have waged a war of words that has restricted the flow of information to the Canadian public, and both are to blame in this situation. The two following clips will examine, number one, the Harper government's hostility towards the public and the media's hostility towards the Harper government, specifically towards the budget tabled in 2015.
Okay, come back to Canadian politics if we can for a second. Your Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, you've heard this discussion over the last little while versus the way he's trying to, handle the media and the way the media wants to ask questions and all that stuff right now. Stephen Harper's come out and said that he believes that the reporters on Parliament Hill are biased against his government, so he's not planning on dealing with them anymore. Just won't deal with them. He actually says that, in his eyes, Ottawa and the press gallery seems to have decided to become the opposition. So today, reporters in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, challenged your Prime Minister on that. We'll get to it in a moment. But first, here's what Stephen Harper had to say yesterday about the press gallery on Parliament Hill.
They don't ask questions at my press conferences now, so, we'll just get the message out on the road. The press gallery at the leadership level has taken, an anti-conservative view. I have trouble believing that, frankly, a Liberal Prime Minister would have this problem.
But if my math is right, they're actually $600 million in the hole.
He had to raid the contingency fund.
Balanced budget, which really isn't balanced.
Just how political this budget is.
For very targeted reasons.
Today's announcements have more to do with the fact that seniors by far vote more than any other demographic.
The government tried to switch the topic to security.
Then he delayed billions in new promises far into the future.
Won't actually be paid out until much later.
One thing that's not in this budget, any mention of climate change.
There was no money to fight global warming and very little for Aboriginals.
Let us not ascribe cleverness or intelligence to Stephen Harper and the people around Stephen Harper that are not there.
In conclusion, the real loser in this conflict between the media and the Harper government, according to our analysis, is the Canadian public. We say this because of the lack of accountability from the Harper government, which has directly affected the media's ability to keep the government honest. In this case, the more the media got restricted by Harper's media policies, the more it sought to expose the policies of the government, as we saw in the second clip. Harper's media policies have had direct consequences on scientific research, climate change issues, and the effectiveness of non-profit organizations. In the 21st century, scientific research and climate change issues have had a greater interest than it ever had. In the 21st century, scientific research and climate change should be welcomed. Instead, Harper's policies have diminished Canada's representative democracy, freedom of press and expression, more and more restricted by a government keen on controlling the political message. For Canadians to make informed decisions about the political future and understand what their elected representatives are doing, it is essential that the press is able to communicate recent political news to its audience without limitations. Unfortunately, based on Harper's media policies, if the government is unwilling to provide this opportunity, who will?